Everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. So I have had some of my reading clients ask me for probably going on a few years now if I'm ever going to record a tarot instruction video. And so today I finally decided how I wanted to record it. I have these really cool tarot gifts that came with a Kickstarter of one of the decks that I got. Now the name escapes me, of course. I'll have to put a link in the description of the tarot deck flip through that I did. But it's a really, really cool, it's like an animated tarot. Anyway, so I'm going to record a series of 5 videos. So break it up into sections. Today we are going to start with the majors. And so when you're learning tarot, basically, once you understand the basic principles of and concepts and symbolism of the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck, you can pretty much read any tarot deck intuitively going forward, because you'll understand the general meaning of the cards and you'll understand the symbolism in the artwork. And so, of course, each creator will have their own meaning and interpretation and art symbolism embedded in the decks that they produce. And so if you really want to truly understand that the deck, each deck individually as it was intended to be understood, you know, they have the guidebook and you can do a deep dive into that particular deck and understand the artist's and the creator's interpretation of those particular divination cards. But as far as like reading intuitively and understanding tarot, you know, and that's kind of what I do. I love just different art styles and different decks. And so I just read any deck intuitively based on this foundation of tarot. So tarot was also created by a couple of members of the Masonic, I forget what they're called, group. It's a brotherhood, I guess, organization. And I think it was started kind of based on the Knights Templar. Anyway, so some of the members of the Masons many, many years ago formed another group called the Golden Dawn. And there's a longer name to that, but I can't remember the whole thing right now. But the Golden Dawn. And they worked with this artist to create the tarot system, divination system. And so there's astrological and planetary associations and different symbolism of the elements and things like that in each card. I really wanted to do this video with the actual Rider-Waite-Smith, but this particular deck that I'm going to be using today is very, very, very close to the Rider-Waite-Smith. So, and it's cool because it's animated. All right, so let's get started. These are the majors. So the tarot is based on somebody's life cycle, the life cycle of a human being. The majors are considered the major events in a human's life that are divinely ordained. Okay, and then the minors, which would be the wands, cups, pentacles, and swords, that's like everyday mundane life and different aspects of that. So today we're going to be dealing with the majors, and this is how the tarot starts. So starting with the Fool card. The Fool card represents a fresh start. So it's literally like the beginning of life or the beginning of a life cycle. Adventure, opportunity, free-spirited. With the dog in there, that does represent like loyalty, spiritual loyalty, that you've got a guide and a guardian with you there that is very loyal to you by your side, but it's your journey. And you do have to be careful. You do have to be careful you know, because he's about to fall off a cliff and he's too busy smelling the flowers. So it's like, as in life's journey, there are cautions, and you are cautioned not to be too foolhardy, not to sabotage your life, not to harm yourself, you know, to plan. Okay, so it represents the planet of Uranus and the symbol of air. Okay, and as you can see, there's like air and winds in the background. Air also in the tarot deck represents thought. So, okay, moving on. Unfortunately, I have to do it this way. Sorry, y'all. The Magician comes next. And so this is the phase of the person's life when they realize that they have tools, that they have skills, that they have the ability to control their environment. So for a baby, that would be realizing they have hands and they can use these hands to grab things and to, you know, to eat and put things in their mouth, and they can use their voice to cry out and get attention and things like that. And so, or at a different, you know, starting a new life cycle or a new phase of life, it would be realizing that, you know, that you do have the tools around you and the capability to affect the world around you. And it represents creativity, inspired action, power, and self-confidence. It does represent the planet Mercury as well as the element of air. And you can see in the card, it's got all the suits represented, which represent all of the elements, combined with spirit, which represents his wand pointing up towards the light, and the infinity symbol above his head. It represents, you know, connection to spirit, and also channeling divine energy from above with the wand. And you'll see with his left hand, he's pointing downwards, as above, so below. And with all the elements present, the wands would be fire, cups is water, pentacles is earth, swords is air. And so, okay, moving on. Next is the High Priestess. So the High Priestess represents the stage of inner knowing, knowledge of self, mastery, self-mastery, but also the mysteries and mysterious ways, intuition, secrets, as well as purity. It does represent the divine goddess. It represents the moon as well as water. In the traditional tarot deck, she's sitting on a throne with two pillars. And I believe it's a pillar of white light and a pillar of dark, which represents the balance of light and dark, of knowledge of that within the self. Okay, so moving on is the Empress. The Empress is at the fertility stage of a person's life cycle. So with a young person, it would be when you reach fertility or starting a new life cycle. It's when whatever you've been working on finally starts to bear fruit. It represents creation, development, abundance, and fertility. It represents the planet of Venus and the element of Earth. And it can represent, it's a combination of all of the queens rolled into one. So the Queen of Cups, the Queen of Wands, the Queen of Pentacles, and the Queen of Swords combined are the Empress. She is divine embodiment of femininity as well. So it can also represent pregnancy in readings, in doing readings for people. So often she's portrayed as being pregnant. Next is the Emperor. So the Emperor is also a combination of all of the kings in the deck. And so he is the divine masculine embodiment of respect, authority, leadership, and father figure. And so the positive aspects of this card would be somebody who is very, very wise and well-rounded and benevolent and, you know, a leader, a father, somebody who cares. In the reverse, it can represent somebody who's very self-centered, a bully, defensive, you know, things like that. And so I haven't talked too much about reversals or like the negative aspects of this card, but if you don't read reversals, whenever this this card comes into a reading, based on the other cards that come out with it, it will give you an indication of what type of energy you're dealing with. But the positive energy of this card is definitely a benevolent, fatherly authority. It represents Mars and Aries, as well as fire, the element of fire. Okay, moving on to the Hierophant. Conformity, religion, social approval, and traditions is the Hierophant. It can also represent government agencies and authority, like systems of authority and systems of belief, where it's not like the Emperor would just be one person, but the Hierophant can represent like a whole organization or group. And it represents traditions. Yes, I did mention that. So it also represents Venus and Taurus, as well as the earth element. And it does represent traditional marriage. And so in the stage of a person's life, it would be the stage when, like in Catholicism, before you get married, you know, you've reached a fertile stage of your life, you're getting ready to get serious, you go to the church, you have a meeting with your potential mate, and you meet with the church, and you know, arrange the official like sealing of the deal, I guess you could say. So is the Hierophant. And then that moves into the Lovers. And so I don't know if you heard my stomach. I'm hungry. Sorry, y'all. The Lovers. Okay, so that represents partnership, harmony, trust, deep love, union. It represents marriage and contracts as well. And so in a reading, it does represent like going from the Hierophant, which would be getting approval from the authority or the structures or the traditions or whatever, to move into this legal union. And again, coming up in a reading, it can represent business partnerships and contracts and agreements, legal agreements as well. It represents Mercury, as well as Gemini and the element of air. Next is the Chariot. So the Chariot represents the stage of forward motion. So you've established a contract, a partnership. Now you're moving forward. And this Emperor is the one who's sitting in the seat of the chariot. So he's the one who's guiding everything going forward. And he has to balance the energies between light and dark, as well as, well, we'll get to that card next, but but it does represent a journey, victory, momentum, perseverance, balanced control, because he has to control these two beasts that are pulling this cart. If they get out of control, he could wreck, you know. And so yeah. Okay, then you move into strength. So having that strength within the self to be able to harness, from the previous card, the Chariot, and to harness the energies of the beasts controlling the cart, pulling the cart, you know, you have to be the one in control of the cart and of the animals. And that leads you to a phase of your life where you have power within the self and the ability to control the self. It represents courage, strength, determination, and self-control, taming the beast within, if you will. So it does represent the sun and Leo, as well as fire. After that, the Hermit. So then once you've reached the stage of determination, self-control, you realize that there's a whole other level of self-mastery that is now available for you to dive into. And that would be wisdom, inner strength, prudence, and solitude, and going within to recognize and understand yourself. It represents Chiron, which is the wounded healer. I think it's an asteroid, and Virgo, as well as the element of earth. So it can represent a stage of your life when you also reach independence, when you're able to work alone, when you're able to, instead of having to work for somebody else or with a whole bunch of group of people, you've reached a certain level of mastery and self-discipline where you're able to go and you're able to work on your own and have an independent level of work as well. Then you move into the Wheel of Fortune, which is when you reach a level of, you've experienced life enough in all of these different stages, and you've made all of these different decisions. You've made a decision to enter into a partnership, or some sort of agreement, or like maybe you haven't gotten married or started a business with anybody, but maybe you have entered into some sort of other legal agreement or contract, for example, and just your journey going forward from there. And based on your decisions and your actions, the wheel is either going to turn in your favor, or it will turn against you, and you will have to repent, and you will have to pay back whatever's going on. And so it represents good fortune, unexpected events, and good luck. It can also represent, you know, setbacks, bad luck. It just depends on the other cards that come out in the reading that will give you an indication of the direction that things have taken, you know, which direction the wheel is turning. If you've done good things with your life, or if you've done bad things with your life. If the card comes out by itself, it can represent Spirit trying to tell you that the choice is yours, the control is yours. You have the power to get the wheel to spin in your favor in a certain juncture. So it does represent the planet of Jupiter, as well as the element of fire. Next, going into justice. So justice is the stage that you reach where based on whatever choices you have made, the wheel has turned. It has either gone in your favor or against you, and now truth is revealed, cause and effect. It represents righteousness as well as balance. So based on whatever choices you've made in your life thus far, this is a stage of your life where the divine is going to bring balance. And things could seem imbalanced. They could seem unfair. And it can indicate, like if it comes out in the reverse or based on the other cards that have come out, it can represent an imbalance or a need for justice, a need for balance, a need for truth. But what it represents is the divine stepping in to bring justice based on your decisions. So, and also going back to the Wheel of Fortune, that represents destiny as well as fate. So I'm going to go backwards for a minute, just because I forgot to mention that. So this also represents fate versus destiny, as well as the Justice card. But based on your decisions, you cause fated events. Those are the events that unfold and unfurl based on the choices that you have made. So if you've made good choices, as I mentioned, things will turn out positively and go in your favor, and it can just bring you more in alignment with destiny, with things that are destined for you, or just other positive things happening in your life to make your experience better, more enjoyable. But destiny is something that is preordained based on your own personal soul frequency, wavelength, contract, or agreement that you entered into in this life that you're living here. So, okay. All right, I just wanted to, I forgot about that. So then justice is the divine bringing in, fate, destiny. It's executing and sentencing as well. And so then you get into the Hanged Man. That would be the stage where you've basically, however things have turned, if they've gone in your favor or not, let's imagine that, nobody's perfect, right? We all make mistakes. We all make some poor choices based on emotions, which is what life is about, is we have to go through this life and experience things with all of these other influences at play. And so that causes things to happen, events to happen. And sometimes we have to be punished or repent. And so this is the Hanged Man. This represents an individual. Back in the day, they would have possibly hung someone up like this as punishment. And so it represents reversal. It does represent letting go. It represents self-sacrifice, and it represents suspension. So basically, if you can imagine medieval times, you've been sentenced to hang like this for a certain amount of time based on what you did. And so you're there and you're hanging and you're thinking about what you've done. You're thinking about all the things that have brought you to this point. You're looking at things even from a different perspective. You gain a new level of understanding. And so this, when you get this card in a reading, it can call you to really look at things from a different perspective, to take a step back and look at things from the bigger picture, and also to surrender and to let go and just allow yourself to exist there in that moment. And sometimes based on the severity of your choices, you can hang to your death, right? And so then death represents beginning or ending, unexpected change, and release. And so that's when death comes in to bring you into another level of being, you know, and we'll get into, well, into the afterlife in some situations, which would be starting like a whole new phase. So when you think something is an ending, it's not always an ending. It's a beginning. It's not just an ending. It's an ending of one thing, but it's a beginning of a whole new level, a new phase. And that would be like the afterlife. And so, okay, so it represents Pluto, Scorpio, and water. Oh, I forgot to mention in, let's see here. Oh, we already did that one. Okay, Justice card represents Venus, Libra, and air. And the Hanged Man represents Neptune and water. Okay, after death comes temperance. This would be like going up to heaven. So now you've died, you're going up to heaven, you're meeting the angels. They are imparting their wisdom and healing upon you. They are telling you that you should have lived a life of moderation and balance and self-control. So even though we do reach with the other cards that have come out, you know, the Chariot, the Strength card, the Hermit card, when you reach a certain level of self-control, which, so we'll all reach those levels of self-control, but then there's still other things that we could have done better and controlled ourselves in different ways. And so that is temperance, coming in to bring healing upon you, to show you the new level of balance that you can experience and feel. And it represents Jupiter, Sagittarius, and fire. And when this comes up in a reading, it represents an angelic presence, divine intervention, healing, balancing the emotions as well with the water. The angel has 2 cups of water, and he's moving one, you know, water into the other cup. He's pouring it, and with his foot in some water as well. So the water, it's like healing your emotions and balancing your emotions, bringing balance into the situation. So next, after the angel comes the devil. And that's when the devil comes in to show you, you know, when the angel says, okay, here's the ways that you really could have needed more balance in your life, more self-control. The devil comes in to show you the negative choices that you've made, the bad agreements that you've entered into, bad contracts that you've entered into, ways that you have held yourself back and held yourself down, different levels of addictions, because temperance represents moderation and self-control from addiction. The devil represents lack of moderation and self-control with addiction. It represents, okay, sabotage, bondage, materialism, restriction. It represents the planet of Saturn and the astrological constellation of Capricorn and Earth. And so it's basically like the Lover's card, except with an angel being there, you know, looking down on the partners entering into the agreement. It's the devil. So okay, there's that. Then you have the Tower. And this is when you reach, you know, the level of upheaval that results from, you know, bad choices, bad agreements, and things like that. So it can represent disgrace. It does represent downfall. It does also represent sudden change. So if you imagine a tower is like, it's like this old, rickety old tower that was built on a sham, if you will. It's just like one of those things where you get some, you know, like shady people to come build your tower to save money, and they build it all jacked up and messed up, and it's just falling apart. And so finally one day, you know, something happens and it completely falls apart, and it's just like a total disaster. But it fell apart because it was built on a faulty foundation. If you see, it's built on a mountaintop. It's built on a faulty foundation. And so it does also represent the opportunity to rebuild stronger and better. Even though it feels like a catastrophe at the moment, it is a chance to rebuild. There is a chance to rebuild. So, all right, next you have the star. The star, again, healing, hope. This is the hope that comes in after the tower has fallen. Once you're like, oh my gosh, this is when you realize, okay, I still have all these bricks are still here. All this is still here. You know, I can rebuild. And so it is also the divine coming in to show you guidance, insight, spiritual love, hope, faith, and healing again. It represents Uranus as well as Aquarius and the element of air. It's just such a lovely image, such a image of peace and tranquility and hope and peace. Yeah, peace again. So, all right. Next we have the moon. So the moon comes in, and once we've received, after the tower has fallen and we've received this level of spiritual guidance, insight, and we felt the love and we've had hope and faith in a situation, then sometimes we can start to overthink things or look too deeply into things and get a bit confused. That's when we start to see illusions, mystery, dreams, seeing your shadow. Because once you realize there's an element of the unseen at play, you start to kind of like maybe look into things and think, you know, see things that may not be there as well. Because then your imagination can get away with you. It can also represent, this card can represent thought forms as well. So it does represent Neptune and Pisces, as well as the element of water. When this comes up in a reading, it can also represent indicating a time of the month whenever the moon is prominent, a prominent lunar aspect that's going to be significant in your life. Because the moon can also affect our emotions deeply. With you see again, there's water here, and water represents emotions in tarot. And so this is, as you can see, it's flowing, like the water is flowing. The emotions are flowing. People can get very emotional during the time of the full moon. There's that term lunacy, where people literally they act out. They can't cope with their emotions. And so they will act out in different ways. They say, you know, there's always like an increase or an influx of crazy things that happen in emergency rooms during the full moon. And that really, I truly believe, is the result of people who are not able to handle their emotions. They have no tools to deal with different emotional things that come up during this time, and they act out. And so that's just my opinion. Comment below if you suspect the same. Okay. Next, after the moon, after the illusions and dreams and seeing your shadow, comes the sun. It's relief. It's material happiness, success, youth and vitality. So it can represent an end to depression as well. Like the moon can represent a depressive period of your life, and then the sun coming out is like an end to that. It's like when you're finally received some emotional relief and you've purged and you feel, you just feel better. So it represents the sun itself and fire energy. It represents youth and children. It can represent pregnancy in a reading as well. Then we have judgment. And that's when finally, after everything has happened, you have been, made your choices. You have the things, fate has either gone for or against you. You have been judged, you've been hanged, you've died, you've been reborn, you've had, experiences with angelic presence and the devil and the shadow self and the tower and the star and all that. Then comes judgment. This is when the divine comes in and truly, the reckoning truly happens. The awakening truly happens. The truth comes out and acceptance is made. This is when the angels would come in and resurrect the dead. And so after the death has already happened, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cards back. So you've already gone through different levels of death. And now it's like, will you be reborn? Will you be reincarnated? Will you be given a second chance? Are you going to give someone else a second chance? Also, it can indicate that in a reading as well. But it's definitely divine intervention and angelic presence. It represents Pluto and it represents fire. So then we come to the world, which is the completion, the true and final completion of the cycle. Card number 21, which 2 + 1 = 3, and 3 is the Trinity. It has an angel, an eagle, a lion, and a bull, which represents the cherubim. And also, I didn't get into this, but different cards represent different angels. So like the judgment card is one angel, the temperance card is another angel, specifically, like I can't remember which ones they are, but temperance, maybe Raphael, for example. Healing, I'm not sure. Look it up. If you work with archangels, if you're really into the archangels, do look it up to see which archangels are associated with which tarot cards. Actually, I have a deck. I have tarot cards, the Archangel Tarot. I have 2 different ones, actually. Anyway, okay, so now we're at the world. This is successful completion of a life cycle, a full life cycle. So, and it does represent accomplishment and travel, moving up, reaching a stage of existence, being, feeling like you're on a pedestal even. It's like the highest state of being. With the wreath there, it represents victory. Wreaths represent victory in the tarot. Award, recognition. It's like the angels are singing your glory and graces. It's reaching a major level. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you all found this helpful. Stay tuned for part 2, which will be the Suit of Wands. Thank you so much and have a great day.